Hello, this is Dice Masters United. It's me, James, and I'm back with another Secret Wars Top 5. This time it's the turn of the Super Rares. If you've seen any of these videos before, you know the form. Dice Masters has had a bit of a soft reboot with the Secret Wars set. Nothing fundamental has changed, but we've got a bunch of lovely new cards, and there's been a quite significant visual overhaul. In each of these videos, I look at one rarity and I talk you through my top cards of that rarity, starting with a few contenders and working my way up to the top 5. So without further ado, let's crack on. Now, there are far fewer super rares than there are of other rarities, so I had a much more limited choice for this video, but even so, there were more than 5 that I wanted to talk about. So let's get rid of a couple to start with and explain why. First contender that didn't make the cut is Phoenix Force Cyclops, which says when fielded, choose an opposing character card, cancelling all previous choices. Your opponent can't field that character die until Phoenix Force Cyclops leaves the field zone. Sound familiar? It should. That's basically a more expensive version of Drax with pretty chunky stats. Spectacular stats notwithstanding, Drax is not only cheaper, but he also prevents your opponent from purchasing dice from the card that you name, whereas Phoenix Force just prevents them fielding it. So unless you really want to double down on Drax's effect, I don't think you've got too many reasons to choose Phoenix Force Cyclops over Drax. Plus, Phoenix Force Cyclops has the most ridiculous global ever to appear on a Dice Masters card. It says pay 2 fists, move a Phoenix Force die from your used pile to the field zone at its lowest level. That would be great if there were actually any Phoenix Force dice in Modern. I don't think any have appeared since AVX, in fact, where this global was reprinted from. And no, it's not enough to have Phoenix Force in the title, it actually has to have the affiliation, and this was ruled. So they've made a global which serves no purpose whatsoever. Pretty good card, but it did not make my top 5. Another good card which didn't make my top 5 is Apocalypse. Actually, I really quite like this card. It's a 6 cost, it's got Overcrush. While Apocalypse is active, when you field a character die, deal 2 damage to target character die. And it's got a global pay a bolt once per turn, KO one of your character dice, and the next die you purchase this turn costs 2 less to a minimum of 1. Now, if those abilities sound familiar, there is a reason for that. The global ability recently appeared in a slightly different form on the Dark Phoenix global, but that one is not limited to once per turn, so you can do it a bunch of times and reduce things by more than 2. Furthermore, the main ability is pretty much like the Thor Super Rare from Infinity Gauntlet, except that you can only, with Apocalypse, target character dice, and you can't direct that 2 damage to your opponent. So, as useful as Apocalypse is, and it's a great package, it really is, it's nothing new. So he also did not make my top 5. And the final super rare, which did not make it to my top 5, is StarLord, which has the Team Watch ability. Remember, this is a while active ability which monitors for affiliated character dice being fielded. And when it triggers, in this case, you deal 2 damage to a target character die and prep a die from your bag, which is a really good ability. The only problem is that this is the only Guardians of the Galaxy affiliated character in the entire Secret Wars set. There are plenty more Guardians characters in Modern. I can think of some Rocket Raccoons that would go very well with this card. And we have the Radicalization Global, which says pay a shield target character die, gains the X-Men or Brotherhood of Mutants affiliation until the end of turn. Now, you can give one of those affiliations to StarLord before then fielding an X-Men or a Brotherhood character. For example, Storm, who already does 1 damage when she's fielded, and now StarLord will do another 2 and prep a die at the same time. I think that's got some potential, but it's not really quite good enough, and it's something of an oversight that there are no further Guardians affiliated characters in the set. So once again, StarLord did not make my top 5 super rares, so let's crack on and say what did, shall we? Well, at number 5, I have plumped for Black Panther. Resisting Doom while Black Panther is active. If you attack with 6 or more different Fantastic Four characters, you win the game. I am not a huge fan of this card, I have to say. I'm not a big Fantastic Four fan. And the idea of keeping 6 different characters in the field and attacking with them at the same time in the current meta of knocking out and spinning down and re-rolling seems a bit far-fetched. But if you could field a bunch of Fantastic Four characters on one turn, then maybe. I put it as my number 5. because it's not dysfunctional like StarLord, and it's not something we've seen before. It's a new win con, and that in itself does, I think, deserve a place. However, with that said, I have nothing more to say about this Black Panther, so let's move on to number 4, which is SpiderMan Black Suit, which is a great call out, I think, to the rare Venom from AVX, Angelo Fortunato, which had a similar ability. Spider-Man says opposing non-fist character dice get -1 attack and -1 defense, while Venom said -2 attack, -2 defense. Does that make a huge difference? Basically, as soon as you have Spider-Man active in the field, your opponent can't keep their sidekicks active unless they're being buffed in a static manner, and that means their sidekicks will be constantly knocked out, which does potentially give them ramp, but it also stands to clog their bag horribly and prevents them from building any kind of, defensive wall, and they can't chump block because they got no chumps to block with. So does it matter that it's -1 and not -2? I think probably not. And it costs 5 and not 6, and it has pretty decent fielding costs and stats. So all round a good card, I think. And I pulled it. Haha! I will say that we've seen a very similar ability more recently than Venom in the Dark Phoenix set on Vulcan, which says while Vulcan is active, your opponent's non-fist characters get -2 defense, which is a sort of hybrid of the two cards we've mentioned. It's a good card. It does cost 6, not 5, and it bears the global pair fist target character die must attack this turn. So it's got a taunt global, which could be used by your opponent to taunt your Vulcan off the field. Spider-Man, in contrast, has a different global, which says pair fist, spin an opponent's fist character down 1 level. Could be some niche uses for that, but at least he doesn't bear a global, which allows him to be taunted off the field. So Spider-Man gets my vote as number 4. Moving on now to number 3. What's it going to be? It's Molecule Man Cheeseburger Eater. I confess I suspect this card is more fun than potent, but fun it is. It says, while Molecule Man is active, your Spider Friends characters cost 1 less to field, cost 1 less to purchase, and return to the field zone after they deal combat damage to your opponent. Now, this has been ruled extensively. Look at the state of that. Basically, all of that is to say that for whatever reason, WizKids have decided that when they deal their combat damage and come back to the field, they come back on the level they were on, not on level 1. Anyway, the value of this card obviously depends on what Spider Friends are available, and there are a few in set. We have Spider-Man that we just mentioned, the even cheaper Spider-Man, which is greatly statted and would cost 0 to field on all faces and 1 to buy if you had a Molecule Man active in the field. So you can imagine a bit of rush with that. And then the Spider-Gwen. There's the one that does damage when she's fielded. And there's also the one that can't be blocked when she's on a burst face. It's hard to do unblocked damage when you're just chipping away with 2. So you'd need a pump global. She'd go through, do the damage, come back again on the same face. But 2 and 2 and 2, even if you manage to pump it a bit, maybe we could use Superman Rare from Superman Kryptonite Crisis, which says when Superman attacks, target character die has its attack changed to 6 until end of turn. Now you're dealing unblocked 6. That's more like it. Honestly, though, this is more of a fun combo than a competitive thing, but I like it, and this is my top 5. So there he is at number 3, Molecule Man. Let's move on to number 2, which is Jane Foster. Jane Foster says, while Jane Foster is active, reduce damage from opposing characters' abilities by 2. When Jane Foster is KO'd, you may move a fist, I assume character die, with a purchase cost of 5 or more from your use pile to your prep area. This may seem familiar to some of the older players amongst you, because it's a bit of a tweak on Iron Fist the Immortal, the promo. He reduced ability damage by 1 and had the same when KO'd ability. I'm not quite sure how much play that secondary ability will get, but the damage reduction is hugely strong. Whether anyone's going to buy it for 5 to reduce the damage from Jubilee, for example, or from Thor, or from Terrax, I'm not sure, but certainly Jubilee and Thor players will have a very sad day. I've already had a few sad days facing Jane Foster on the other side of the board. Let's not forget that she also has a very interesting global which says pay 1 generic, spin target character die that was fielded this turn up 1 level. That has proved to be very handy indeed on a number of occasions. So, Jane Foster, very strong ability. Imagine pairing that, for example, with the Wonder Woman that prevents when attacks and when fielded abilities. You will just completely lock your opponent down. But, you know, as with all of these things, it's not winning you the games, so it's not number 1. But it's pretty interesting. Shall we see what number 1 is? Let's. My number 1 Secret Wars super rare is... Yes, this is more like it. This is game winning. It is Invisible Woman, Interdimensional Adventurer. It's a 6 cost, which says when fielded, re-roll 2 target character dice, and all of your character dice get +3 attack until end of turn. You may have seen this in videos already in which I've referred to it as Frontline on Legs. The front line was an action die which gave +3 to all of your unblocked attacking character dice. This actually gives it to all of your dice, so it's even better. And it's much easier, as we've mentioned before in these videos, it's much easier to line up when fielded effects than action dice. Because you can KO the die with the Dark Phoenix Global or the Apocalypse Global, for example, and you can go again with it next turn, rather than waiting for it to come round like an action die. The downside of this, of course, is that the aforementioned Wonder Woman puts the kibosh on it, but hey, let's not worry about that. There were some very quick teams back in the day with the front line which just fielded a bunch of sidekicks and buffed them and then charged across the board and won. And I can see Invisible Woman doing the same thing. I don't know if it's top competitive, but it's certainly orange. It's getting there. You know, you could field multiple Invisible Women in 1 turn. I think I might have done that on a video, and give your characters +6. You don't have to get too many characters which have been buffed by +6 through to win the game. I like this a lot. Okay, that's it for my top 5 Secret Wars super rares. Do you agree? What would you have included in your top 5? These are clearly just my opinions and my favourites, and as I've mentioned a few times, not necessarily the best cards, but they are definitely my favourite cards. Please do let me know in the comments if you disagree, and if you have any questions, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all those kinds of YouTubery things. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I hope that's been a little bit helpful. Take care, and bye-bye.